This starts back on May 12th, 2017, when the North Korean government released the most powerful ransomware virus ever.
No, they didn't.
Oh boy, I cannot wait to hear this one.
It is not a safe space for verified accounts here.
What are you talking about, safe space? In order for there to be a possibility of a safe space, there must be a danger. And I'm sorry, Heisenberg, but you are not the danger. You are not the one who knocks. On my list of dangers, some weirdo making conspiracy videos about me to his 4,000 viewers is very, very low. In fact, it is not on the list at all.
So this dude is credited with stopping the WannaCry ransomware attack. Before that, he was a black hat hacker, and with the new attention he got from stopping the WannaCry attack, he was facing charges from the FBI. The charges were dropped. He was sentenced to only time served. That's interesting. That's what flavor of Fed you are. You're working with the FBI.
Well, actually, you've got me there. I got charged with a bunch of crimes and then I worked for the FBI in order to get them to drop the charges and sentence me to time served. It makes like complete sense if you literally don't think about it at all, even for a second. Because in order to be sentenced to time served, I must be sentenced. And in order to be sentenced, I must be convicted of a crime. And in order to be convicted of a crime, I must be charged with a crime. So the charges were dropped and was sentenced to time served is a completely logically incoherent sentence. But I'm not your law professor, so I suggest you just maybe try reading some books.
And it's really obvious by the way you attribute this to North Korea without saying it may have been North Korea, because the only people saying it was North Korea is the United States government and a couple of their vassal states, along with some capitalist corporations who obviously want to spread propaganda about a communist country. The experts, the actual experts, Marcus, don't agree with you.
So if you would read the article date with me, that was posted 7 days after the WannaCry cyber attack. The investigation into it hadn't even begun yet. The article was in response to people speculating that it was North Korea based on the fact that the WannaCry code had a lot of similarities with code that we know North Korean hackers wrote. So if you actually would read the article, you might find out that I was one of those experts. I was one of the people saying that code similarities is not enough to accuse someone of a cyber attack. Now, between then and now, there have been many investigations by many different countries, and a lot of them have come out and said it was North Korea. And sure, you can say, oh, it's the US propaganda machine and all the US's friends. Let's pretend you're right. But let's say North Korea did do the cyber attack. Who else is going to come out and say it? Are their allies going to be like, oh yeah, it was him, just like throw them under the bus? Is some random citizen in China going to come out and accuse them? No. The only people with the capabilities and the motive to accuse North Korea of a cyber attack that they did do are the people who accused North Korea of the cyber attack that they did do.
I'm not going to dignify this with an actual response because you're deflecting, Marcus. You want to nitpick a couple of things that I may have made a mistake on. For instance, when I misspoke and said charges were dropped, you knew what I meant. The 4,000 people watching my video knew exactly what I meant.
Okay, I guess we're doing this again. So the reason why you and your followers understand what you meant and I'm struggling here is because neither of you know anything. I actually understand how the US justice system works, and as you cleverly pointed out, I have personally experienced it. So there's a bit of a language barrier between your absolute nonsense based on your comically fantasy understanding of the way the US government works and my actual knowledge and lived experience. So yeah, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about because I don't think you do either.
The actual point of my video was to show that you were moralizing over this cyber attack, this ransomware attack that could have affected a bunch of institutions, although it wouldn't have, because the ransom was only $300. And when paid, the files were decrypted. So if you paid the ransom, your files were restored to the way they were before.
This isn't even basic cybersecurity. Like, this would be the basics of how computers work. But we actually don't really need to talk about that. We don't need to talk about all the things that can go wrong during ransomware, from hard disk failures to power outages to software crashes to key loss to database concurrency, because like none of that matters. We also don't need to talk about the fact that it's not just $300. It is $300 per system, and the way in which WannaCry works, if it infected one system on your network, it highly likely infected all of them. So that $300 could easily be $300,000. And we don't need to talk about the fact that you have to decrypt each individual system separately, because that would take a lot of time and it wouldn't really be realistic for the average organizational IT administrator to log into each of their individual systems and decrypt them all. And we don't need to talk about how actually difficult it is to get Bitcoin, especially if you're a company, because of regulations such as Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering, or the fact that it takes a pretty long time to acquire $300,000 worth of anything, never mind Bitcoin. Now, the reason we don't need to talk about that is because you missed one pertinent fact, something that almost everyone in cybersecurity, from beginners to experts, knows about WannaCry, and that's that it didn't work. People did not just pay the ransom and get their files back because it didn't work. There are a very small handful of reports alleging people did get their files back, but not a single one of those was actually confirmed. In fact, there's a lot of confirmed reports that people did pay and didn't get their files back. And that's the more likely scenario, because simply WannaCry did not work. Now, there were a couple of minor bugs, such as sometimes it just wouldn't send the key to the server, which meant there was no possible way to decrypt your files. But the bigger problem is, typically when you create ransomware, you create a unique Bitcoin address for each individual victim. That way, when that Bitcoin address receives a payment, you automatically know that they paid, and you can automatically issue a decryptor. Except WannaCry didn't work like that. It had a single hard-coded payment address, which meant that there was no physically possible way that they could know who paid and who didn't. They would essentially have to ask you for access to like your financial institution, like your crypto exchange, log in and then look for a payment from your account to their address. And WannaCry infected millions of systems. The tech support burden on doing that for millions and millions of systems would be insane. It would require like something on the scale of the entire US government. So they simply just didn't decrypt anyone's files. But like, what matters more to me is just your argument is so fucking weird. Your primary argument is basically that North Korea didn't do it, based on you providing no evidence whatsoever and just calling everyone who disagrees with you a fed. But your backup argument is essentially, well, just in case they did do it, ransoming hospitals isn't bad actually. Like, they can just go get some Bitcoin, pay the ransom, get their files back, everything will be fine and dandy. And that argument is absolutely insane, given the position that you're trying to argue. Like, you're trying to argue that the sanctions against North Korea are, like, morally wrong. And then your argument is, oh no, I think it's okay to just ransom hospitals because all they got to do is pay a bit of money. Like, dude, what the hell? I think we also need to address the fact that just calling anyone who disagrees with you a fed is the most childish argument imaginable. It's basically the I know you are, but what am I of arguments. And not to mention, like, even if by chance someone was a fed and you were somehow able to prove that, like, how do you think being a fed works? Do you think someone signs up to work for the US government and then they get subscribed to US government opinions weekly and they're only allowed to have opinions that are sanctioned by the US government? Like, is that really how you think it works? Like, I'm sure that's how some of the regimes you defend work, But the US does not do that. And I wouldn't even say it's through lack of trying. The US government is just too convoluted, inefficient, and vast to ever achieve that level of authoritarianism. The US government is one of the biggest employers on earth. They employ 2.9 million people. And like, you don't get 2.9 million people agreeing on literally anything. Your argument isn't just stupid, it's stupid on so many different levels that it actually causes me physical pain to try and respond to it.